for coming to the 8th annual Bushwick Film Festival. We're going to start our Women in Tech panel. I wanted to introduce you to our panelists for the Women in Tech panel. This is our second annual New Media Day, and we thought it would be appropriate to have a Women in Tech panel since we've been doing our Women in Film and TV panel for the past couple of years. We thought this would be a good sister panel to our New Media Day. So let me introduce our panelists. We have Felicia O'Gara, who's a software engineer and the co-founder of Code Crew. And we have Chris Wu, who's the developer advocate at the New York Times and also a co-founder of Write Speak Code. Alex Chin is our moderator. She's a freelance software engineer. Then we have Nicole Dominguez, who's a product designer, and Catherine Bennett, who just did our creator talks, and she's also an assistant professor at NYU. Thanks.
Thanks, Amalia. I'd love to start this conversation by asking all of you what inspired you or pushed you to enter the world of tech. Catherine?
I came about it from like a really roundabout fashion. I studied psychology and then I really got into art, and it was interesting because my father and my brother are both like engineers, and technology was around us like quite a bit like growing up, and I hated it because they were always using the modem when I wanted to get on the phone. But then when I started creating my sculptures, I started to want to work with circuits, and then I started to want to make like certain things like turn on and turn off and to utilize sensors. So in order to like really get into that stuff, I came into technology kind of through the back door with like having these ideas that I wanted to create, and I didn't want to rely on other people to help me develop my software. I really wanted to have my hands in there and to have control in there, because there's a lot of different things that can happen in the making process that you're not aware of till you're there, and they can be like really wonderful surprises. So.
Thanks, Nicole.
Tech is something I kind of fell into. As a teenager, I taught myself how to code through a site called neopets.com. Basically, you get to have pets, and I wanted to make a website for my pets, so I learned how to code, and that's where I started. So I didn't really think of it as a career, I just thought of it as something fun to do on the side, and now it led me into my current career.
I can't tell you how awesome I think that is. Neopets! It's like Lego Mindstorms, right? Like you don't. For me, I don't think about technology as like the thing. Like I wasn't driven by technology. I was driven by the idea that like, hey, computer can work a lot faster and work on more complicated problems more quickly than I can. So, yeah. I mean, when I was little, my dad had a computer and he was like, you should go check it out. And so I did. And I made my very first game where it was a really basic game of you have 10 matchsticks, you're in the dark, you walk in a certain direction, you either find treasure or you find traps, right? Mm-hmm. So, yeah, that was like the peak of my gaming, my game programming ability. Yeah, but since then it's like, programming is frustrating, but it can be your friend. So, yeah, that's, I knit. Turns out knitting and code kind of go together really well. I speak a few different foreign languages, and some of the structures of foreign languages go together with programming really well. So, yeah, that's kind of what happened.
Well, as far as myself, I come from a non-traditional background. So during the economic crisis, I pretty much lost my job. And I was like, okay, what am I going to do next? So I considered getting a master's degree in a bunch of different stuff. Like maybe I should go for this, maybe I should go for that. And then I said, maybe computer science. I also decided that maybe, okay, I want to go back to school for business since this is what I've been doing for the past few years. And I reached a point, I was like, do I really want to get in any more debt? So I started doing more and more research. And I found out that, hey, with computer science, there's jobs out there. There's tons of jobs out there, like if you want to become a software engineer, developer, and this is something you can actually learn on your own. So after learning that, I'm like, okay, let me try this out. So I started doing more research. I started finding online resources and started teaching myself how to code. And from there, that was it. And I've been going with it ever since.
Thanks, Felicia. Could you tell us a little bit more about why you started Code Crew and what Code Crew is?
Okay, so Code Crew is an organization that aims to provide affordable education, with computer science education for all. As far as the process, when I decided, hey, I want to code, it was actually a process I was going through with my husband. Like, we both were in a similar situation. We got married on Friday. Monday, my husband lost his job. Not this Friday. This was a couple of years ago. Let's take it back. But it was funny. Like, we got married. We finally decided to do it. And then Monday, I get a call like, Ava, just lost my job. And then I lost my job a couple of months after that. We were both working in the financial services industry. We were working odd jobs. And we were like, damn, like, what are we going to do with our life? Like, seriously. And we made the decision together. And while we were like going through the process and we're going to learn how to code, we decided, hey, let's try to learn with other people. So we started out actually with a meetup group. We had started meetups back in the day. Like, I had a karaoke meetup group. My husband had a songwriting meetup group. So we were familiar with meetups, but we were like, hey, it'll be cool if we do something like this, but for coding. And maybe we can meet with other people in coffee shops. And that's how Code Crew started. We decided to start the meetup group. It grew extremely fast. We didn't even know coding was like becoming that big. And like I'll never forget, we set up our first meetup and we had like over 100 RSVPs. And like we scheduled the meetup to actually be in the Heartland Brewery in Union Square, like in the whole little area by the bar. So we're like, oh no, we have 100 people coming. What are we gonna do? So we're like looking for different places. And then we just started having more and more meetups and people were just coming out. And from there, people would ask us, hey, like, you guys are leading these study groups. You seem like you know this stuff really well. How about teaching some classes? And then from there, we started teaching classes and programming, from everything from like HTML, CSS, JavaScript, computer science, and more.
Thanks, Felicia. Chris, I'd love for you to tell us a little bit more about Write Speak Code.
Oh, sure. So Write Speak Code is a 3-day, we call it a conference, it's a workshop. Our target audience is women engineers, and across all areas of the spectrum in terms of, whether you're novice or whether you're senior. But the idea was that there are a lot of women who write code, but they're not, like, just the public doesn't realize that, right? I mean, the percentage is still small, but it's not as small as we think it is, right? And part of the reason is that a lot of women aren't easy to find. They're not publicly visible. And we figured, why don't we do something? It's me and four other women who came up with this idea. Like, why don't we do something to help women who want to be visible do that? So we concentrated on 3 areas: writing, opinion writing, and essay writing in general. Public speaking, so meetups, conferences, what have you, and open source code push, right? So, because when you make a pull request, suddenly, like, you're a person on the internet, right? And what's great about that too is that as more people contribute to code, they shape what that code base is, right? They shape the library. So if we have more women doing that as well, more women are contributing to that code base. So at the we take you from basically, like, we presume you start from ground level, right? And we take you through each one of the skills. At the end of each day, you will have something finished that you can then take forward. So you have an essay, and it's about like this idea that you own expertise. There is something that you know how to write about. At the end of that, you have an essay. The second day with speaking, you start figuring out like what is a viable talk proposal for a meetup or for a conference. We also have panelists come in from various tech conferences and tech meetups that kind of explain like what are they looking for, how to approach them, what your chances might be. As it turns out, who knew? Like going to pitching to a big conference might be easier for you as a new speaker because they have lots of room for variability in how well the talks go, right? Whereas a single track conference, they want somebody who's very, very polished and experienced in public speaking. And if you've never done it before, you need practice, right? So they may have a higher bar. It's not that they don't necessarily want women speaking there. Of course they do, but they want to see that you're going to be comfortable in that single track. And again, that bar is higher. But by the end of that day, not only will you have worked on a talk proposal, but you will have also practiced a version of the talk. So you've done it. You have something then to bring forward. And on the third day, we work with Vanessa Hurst, who runs a company called Code Montage based here in New York. And she takes the entire group through the process of making a pull request to an open source code base. And what's interesting about that is we also talk about like where to find projects that have friendly communities to new people, so that when you do choose to submit something, you're not going to get it's more likely to get accepted rather than having people like have a bad reaction to who's this new person doing that thing, right? So that's that. But again, once you've done that and done it a few times, you can take that skill forward as well. So that was basically the idea.
Thanks, Chris. I've actually attended Write Speak Code, and it's probably my favorite event for female engineers that I've ever been to. So thank you. Catherine, I'd love to hear a little bit more about the role that technology has played in your art.
Well, for me, for me, technology is a language, right? Technology, once you can kind of get your feet wet and get rolling with it, technology, you can really do anything with it. When I talk to my students, like on their first day of physical computing, if you're not familiar, physical computing, we program like small chips with code, and then we can couple, physical things to that, whether they're sensors, motors, So on the first day of class for physical computing, I asked my students, like, what would your superpower be? And you can't do something like flying or like, being invisible. Let's be a little bit like more down to earth about that. And so the students all go around, they say something, and I tell them that, this is a class where you could do something with, So like you could make those things happen in this class, because with technology you can have this idea, you can literally build something and you can pull it through to fruition in a different sort of fashion than anything else. So for me, technology is all about like creation. It's about having these ideas and then being able to build them into, reality, which there's something really magical about that. So as I sort of mentioned before in my work, I see technology as like the sort of nervous system through like a space, through an app, and with that, it's literally like your highway that anything can go across, whether that's sound, media, stories, like anything. Yeah.
Thank you. Nicole, you mentioned that you're a self-taught engineer. Have you found that to be beneficial to your career or challenging perhaps, or both?
I think both. It's beneficial in that I get to learn at my own pace, and I get to curate what it is that I learn. And it's sometimes challenging because it is very lonely. You have to find the mentors to maybe help you if you can find them. So that's definitely challenging. In terms of benefits, I think that it's really empowered me to be able to pursue my passions and be able to create a career that I really love. I dropped out of college, so without having that structure, I was able to find the career path that really made sense for me as a person.
Cool. So I've noticed, or the world has noticed, a really big shift in recent years. Everyone wants to learn to code. There's like programming schools opening across the country and the world. President Obama is writing code. I don't know if you knew. He writes Python. And Mayor de Blasio just announced that over the next 10 years, the city of New York is going to be spending $81 million to start computer science programs in every public high school in the city. So with that in mind, why do you all think women should learn to code?
Why not? No, I mean, like, there is a part of me that's just like, honestly, why not, right? It's like, you know, we learn to write, and we learn to read, and we learn to do math. Like, given the state of the world right now and how much we rely on technology, we should be more than just users of technology. We should also be authors of it as well. So I kind of feel like, you know, the reason why women should do it is the same reason why men or, you know, people of any gender should do it, right? It's because, like, it is a way for you to have authorship, to have ownership, to express yourself.
Yeah, I challenge my students, in thinking think about how much media you consume every day, right? And say, what if even like an eighth of that, a quarter of that, you are actually creating media, for other people? We consume so much media. Like, where do you sleep? Like, where's your cell phone in relation to like where you sleep, right? And, and it's about like, why not make it, right? Why not learn this? And I think Douglas Rushkoff has this like really beautiful metaphor. We don't have to know how to fix our car, right, in order to be able to operate a car. But with technology, it's a little bit different. It's about being like, whether you're a passenger or whether you're a driver in that car, right? So if you don't know much about programming, or if you don't have like an idea about like what goes on into these things, you're literally a passenger, right? Whatever media is like served to you, you may not even know like what's going on in the background, like, and that goes into like the politics of these situations. Think about like your Google searches. Think about like how all this stuff is like curated, to present to you. But many people don't question that curation. They just assume that it's open when it may not. So even if you may not be like end up to be like a hardcore programmer, if you have some idea, like if you understand like concepts that go on into those things, that you have a better way to like move through this world, right, than being just a subject of it.
And bouncing off of that, I think it's really empowering when you can solve a problem for you and your community by creating something with technology, rather than just like receiving other things that people have made that don't solve your exact problems or help the people around you.
For me, I think it helps you, and this is going off a Steve Jobs quote, which I thought was kind of cliche when I used to hear it, but it does teach you how to think differently. Like, as far as like my life in general and learning how to code, just the fact like I learned how to code, I think about everything in a different way now, a totally different way than I would before. And it's like, you learn so much from it. And then the fact that there's so many resources out there. You have tons of free programs out there. You have boot camp programs. You have meetups out there for women. You have organizations out there for women. There's so much access, so many resources, whether, okay, if you're like, okay, I'm broke and I can't learn how to code, there's no excuse. There's places like online, like Coursera. They have computer science courses from some of the top universities around the world for free, teaching you these skills, which you could pretty much open up your laptop and spend some time learning. So yeah, my 2 points, and just piggybacking off of what everybody said, like, I think it helps you think differently, and then with the resources, everyone should learn how to code.
Cool, yeah. So even if everyone can learn how to code, and even if a lot of women are programming, according to data that was recently released from all the top tech companies like Google, Twitter, Facebook, Amazon, and whatnot, women only comprise like 15% of their technical staff. Why do you think that is?
Startup problems? Yeah. I don't.
Something I've experienced in working at a lot of startups. People hire people that they know. And if you're in someone's network, they're more likely to reach out to you and hire you and want to work with you because they know something about you. And if you don't exist in the networks of like old white men, that it's difficult to be
Young white
seen
men.
in that.
Yeah, I guess that's what I mean by startup problems. Like, you probably don't have a lot of money, you have an idea, you probably went to, have a CS degree, whatever, right? And so you just work with the people that you know because you're super excited about this, and hey, you might become a billionaire, right? And and I think that the thing about larger companies, right, with the Googles and the Twitters, is they are specifically looking for the top talent, which means that more than likely, they basically only look at 5 schools: MIT, Stanford, University of Washington. There's a couple others I can't remember, but it's like they're all fishing in the same pools of schools of basically Ivy League caliber. Well, when you think about it, I mean, what is the diversity of those schools, right? So I think that contributes to that problem as well. It's just people, you have to work hard. I was just talking with some people at, was it Slack or Pinterest? Well, actually, I have been speaking with people at Slack and Pinterest. So a lot of the tech companies, especially in the Bay Area, but even at Etsy here in Brooklyn, they want this state to change, right? They recognize that just having 20-year-old white, college-educated, upper middle class men is not doing them any favors. So in the case of one of the companies I spoke to, they've put together this diversity recruitment and retention program. The recruitment program, they made it a priority for them to look at not just the top CS schools, but the top CS schools that also have the most diverse student bodies within the school. And so they discovered, looking along both of those dimensions, that there were excellent programs that weren't Ivy League. And so they now send teams of people down there to those campus recruiting fairs to be like, hey, you're one of the top students in this program, and you're exactly you've got the skills and the qualifications that we are looking for. Like, come and work with us. And they're going to places like Texas and Georgia and Maryland. So, but they realize that in order to change the thing, you have to be to change the status quo. You have to be deliberate about change, right? So it's also true in filmmaking, and so that's what I'm starting to see is people are making an effort to change.
What are some other tools or initiatives that you found to be successful in getting more women in tech or keeping women in tech?
I come from a different sort of vantage point here, but it's, for me, in working with students, a lot of times I'll look out amongst my programming students, in some of the universities I've taught in, and it's 80% male, right? And it's hard. I can't choose my students. I can't go out come in this class, But I think for me, when I'm working with younger people, right, and trying to turn them on to technology, to me it's about what technology can do. And some people just have this very programmer, you have to be white, you probably don't come out in the sunlight very often, you have a cat, there are these stereotypes that go on with working with technology. But once we can start breaking those stereotypes and showing them other things that can be made with technology, right? You can make an installation, right? There's wearables. You can work in fashion in this, right? Because I think people are just used to looking at the technology that either they consume or with those stereotypes. But if we can start to open that up and to have greater visibility into other aspects in the world, I think that might help.
Okay, I just want to chime in, and I think I may say some stuff that may get me in trouble with a few women or people in general, but I just want to be real, just based off of what I've seen. I've taught hundreds of students. I've made the transition myself, into tech and becoming a software engineer. So honestly, I feel like a lot of women are just intimidated, honestly, like by everything that goes on, by all these stereotypes. And honestly, a lot of them just give up. I've seen, or it's like you come into this and your priorities are not straight. Like, don't get me wrong, there are situations where there's like sexism that goes on, but for instance, like I've had classes, I've had some very, very intelligent and driven women. Like one girl, for instance, she was like in a nursing program. She came to me like, I'm serious, I'm gonna learn this stuff, I'm gonna do whatever it takes. And then like 3 weeks into class, it's like, oh, well, I have to go home and cook, and I have to do this and do that. And I'm like, you have to take care of yourself. Like, we're all women. And a lot of times as women, we'll say that we have to take care of everybody else in the world but ourselves. And it's more or less about saying, okay, I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna get mine. You know, I'm gonna be that engineer. I'm gonna play with the boys. Like, you look at me. I'm like I should not be working as an engineer right now. I'm black. First of all, I'm black. I'm a female. I'm on the hefty side. Like, I'm definitely not in the cool kids crew. But it takes a lot of hard work. And like a lot of people, I hear the talk. Like I said, it's just not that one girl. There's tons of them who come in, I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna be that and I'm gonna be an engineer and I'm gonna be a developer and I'm gonna do this. I'm like, just do it. Don't come to me with that, just do it. Like seriously, just do it. It takes a lot of hard work. I tell them all the time, I tell my students, I've lost weekends. I've pretty much lost sleep multiple nights throughout the week. This takes hard work, but just like anything else, like if you're a filmmaker, if you're a songwriter, you're anybody trying to make it, it's gonna take work. You're gonna lose some sleep. You're gonna have some losses. Everybody is not gonna be friendly. That's the world. This is business. You have to know people don't care about you. Take care of yourself, not I'm going to cook for my damn husband or this and that. He'll be there. Let him get a TV dinner or pick up something. Seamless is available. But I'm just really tired of, honestly, like I said, there is some sexism and there's a lot of things that go on, but there are a lot of people too that just make excuses. If you put in the work, over these past few years, I've seen how much time, and if you put in that work, eventually you will see some things that happen. I don't have friends in the tech, I didn't start off with friends in the startup industry. It just takes initiative and hard work. And if anybody wants to beat me up on Twitter or anything, let's go for it. But anyway, I'm done. Sorry.
Thanks, Felicia. We have to wrap up soon, but I'd just like to ask the rest of our panel if you have any words of advice for aspiring women technologists in the audience.
Find a community, right? Find a community, because it's getting started. Like, you get all excited, like, yeah, we're gonna do this. But if you find a community, like somebody that can like help support you or that's going through it at the same time, then like you're not alone through this, right? And you can ask like questions, like starting a meetup is a great way, because you're not the only person doing this. There's somebody else, Craigslist, like just go out there and just put things out there in order to find someone that's interested in the same things. And then like you guys can figure it out together, like with all the resources that are out there. There's so many resources. It's amazing.
Yeah, and I think as a woman or as a minority, there are so many ways to be held back. But if you don't let yourself be held back and you continue to push forward and realize that there's a place for you, especially in this industry where, there's so many open jobs and positions, and this push to be in it, that you'll just end up being successful if you continue and don't let yourself be pushed down by anything or anyone.
Yeah, I guess in addition to both of those things, realize that if you want to get into code, it is hard, right? Like you bang your head against a wall and then like the wall breaks down and you come up against another wall and same thing over and over again. That is totally normal. There's no programmer for whom it's like Mozart. There just isn't, right? So having grit or that sense of determination and tenacity is more important than being smart. So I'll put that out there.
Just do it.
Thank you.